In The Young and the Restless 30s full episodes the 5th of March 2026, even something as simple as grilling meat can become a metaphor for emotional survival. And if anyone understands how to stand in front of heat without flinching, it is Sharon Newman. When people joke about barbecuing the Sharon Newman way, they are not just talking about technique, they are talking about endurance. Sharon has been standing in emotional fire for decades, and lately, the flames have only intensified. The upcoming trial of Mariah Copeland hangs over her like smoke that refuses to clear. It is not just a legal proceeding, it is a reckoning. Sharon knows her daughter is not well. She knows something fractured inside Mariah long before the situation escalated to criminal implications. But knowing your child needs help and knowing how to save them are two very different things. Right now, Sharon's priority is painfully basic: determine whether Mariah is going to prison. Everything else, reputation, gossip, strained friendships, comes second. There is a particular kind of helplessness that comes with watching your child stand on the edge of consequences you cannot absorb for them. Sharon has always been protective, sometimes to a fault, but this time protection may not be enough. If Mariah faces incarceration, Sharon will have to confront the reality that love cannot undo legal damage, and that is the kind of truth that strips a parent down to raw earth. In the midst of preparing for courtrooms and attorneys, Sharon turns her attention to Daniel Romalotti, Jr., not out of suspicion but out of instinct. Daniel has become unexpectedly connected to Tessa Porter, and Sharon understands that emotional undercurrents often influence courtroom outcomes. She needs to know where Tessa stands, not just legally, but emotionally. Tessa's testimony, her mindset, her unresolved feelings toward Mariah could shift everything. Sharon is not interrogating Daniel. She is gathering pieces of a puzzle she fears may never fully come together. Tessa and Daniel exist in that ambiguous space where affection has formed but labels have not. They care about each other genuinely, quietly, but neither seems ready to define what they are building. Perhaps that hesitation is wise. Tessa is still emotionally bruised. Daniel, too, carries his own complicated history. What makes their dynamic compelling is that it does not feel impulsive. It feels cautious, almost fragile. And yet fragility does not eliminate depth. Tessa's emotional state is particularly complex. She is horrified by what Mariah has done. The woman she once knew, loved, and trusted feels like a stranger. There is betrayal in that realization, not romantic betrayal, but existential betrayal. How do you reconcile the person you shared your life with and the person who now stands accused of actions you cannot comprehend? Tessa's shame is palpable. She does not want to be associated with the chaos. She does not want to defend behavior she cannot morally justify. But beneath that outrage, beneath the embarrassment and disappointment, there is confusion, and confusion often lingers longer than anger. The truth is, Tessa never received full closure. When things unraveled between her and Mariah, the explanations felt incomplete. Trauma was hinted at, stress was cited, but something deeper remained unspoken. It is entirely plausible that Tessa will seek confrontation not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. She may demand answers not to humiliate Mariah, but to understand her. Why did it escalate this far? When did the shift begin? Was there a moment Tessa missed? A warning sign she overlooked? Those unanswered questions gnaw at her, even as she tries to move forward with Daniel. What complicates this further is that confronting Mariah could reopen wounds Tessa is not prepared to handle. Closure is seductive in theory but destabilizing in practice. If Mariah offers explanations that evoke sympathy, guilt may surface. If she offers none, the emotional rupture may deepen. Tessa stands at a crossroads between self-preservation and emotional reckoning, and whichever path she chooses will ripple through the trial and beyond. Meanwhile, another reconnection quietly reshapes Genoa City's emotional map. Claire Grace Newman has officially ended things with Holden Novak. That chapter, intense and unstable, has closed for now. Claire's decision suggests clarity. Holden represented turbulence, unpredictability, and unresolved darkness. Walking away from that signals growth, even if it is accompanied by exhaustion. The natural next step is her conversation with Cal Abbott, and like the volatility she experienced with Holden, Cal represents familiarity and history. Their dynamic has always hovered between potential and hesitation, with Claire newly single and Cal not fully reconciled with his own emotional entanglements. A serious conversation feels inevitable. Not a flirtation, not a casual exchange, a real discussion about where they stand and whether there is anything solid left to rebuild. Cal, for his part, has often struggled with timing. His feelings tend to surface either too late or too cautiously. If Claire approaches him now seeking clarity, he will have to decide whether he is prepared to commit emotionally or continue orbiting possibilities without landing. And Claire, having stepped away from Holden's chaos, may no longer tolerate ambiguity. She might demand definition. That, in itself, would mark significant character evolution. When you look at these arcs together, Sharon bracing for trial, Tessa wrestling with unresolved grief, Claire redefining her romantic boundaries, you see a theme emerging. Everyone is confronting heat in their own way. Sharon faces it like a seasoned griller, steady despite the flames. Tessa stands too close to emotional fire, unsure whether stepping back will extinguish it or simply leave her cold. Claire is learning to walk away before she gets burned again. What strikes me most about this stretch of story is its emotional realism. There are no grand kidnappings or dramatic deaths dominating the narrative, just people dealing with consequences. A mother facing the possibility of her daughter's imprisonment, an ex-lover demanding answers, a young woman choosing stability over volatility. These are quieter stakes, but they cut deeper. If Mariah does face prison time, Sharon's strength will be tested in ways we have not seen in years. If Tessa confronts Mariah, the emotional fallout could either bring clarity or finality. And if Claire and Cal choose to try again, it must be rooted in honesty rather than nostalgia. In the end, grilling the Sharon Newman way is not about perfection, it is about endurance. You stand in the heat, you manage the flames, and you hope that what comes out the other side is not charred beyond repair. Genoa City is simmering right now. The only question is who can withstand the fire long enough to transform rather than collapse. On The Young and the Restless, power struggles are never just about corporations. They are about ego, legacy, love, and the quiet cost of ambition. The collision between Phyllis Summers and Cane Ashby is no longer just a corporate chess match. It is a moral reckoning disguised as a business dispute. Phyllis has never denied that she plays hard. In fact, she has built her identity around it. If there is a shortcut, she will find it. If there is leverage, she will use it. And if there is an emotional vulnerability in an opponent, she will not hesitate to press against it. That has always been her strength and her downfall. Now, however, the atmosphere has shifted. The same ruthless tactics that once made her formidable are isolating her. People are no longer impressed by her boldness. They are exhausted by it. They are urging her, some gently, some bluntly, to do the right thing. And for Phyllis, the right thing has always been a flexible concept. But this time, it is painfully clear. It means relinquishing control. It means correcting a wrong rather than doubling down. It means acknowledging that winning at any cost is not the same as surviving with dignity. What makes this situation different is not public pressure. It is her children. Daniel Romalotti, Jr. and Summer Newman are no longer willing to rationalize her choices. Phyllis misses them in a way that cuts deeper than she is comfortable admitting. For all her bravado, she is still a mother whose sense of identity is tied to being needed by her children. The silence from Daniel, the distance from Summer, those wounds do not heal through corporate victories. They fester. And until she makes a genuine effort to repair the damage she has caused, they are choosing distance over loyalty. That rejection unsettles her more than any legal threat or boardroom challenge. Meanwhile, Cane is operating from a different emotional axis entirely. His motivation is singular and unwavering: protect Lily Winters and their children, Maddie Ashby and Charlie Ashby. Even stripped of formal control over the empire, Cane is not powerless. Influence in Genoa City does not evaporate with a title. It shifts. It finds new channels. Cane understands networks, alliances, vulnerabilities. He may no longer sit at the head of the table, but he still knows where every pressure point lies. And a man fighting for his family is often more dangerous than a man fighting for ego. The tension between Phyllis and Cane is fascinating because they are driven by different fears. Phyllis fears irrelevance and abandonment. Cane fears loss of access and protection. When fear shapes strategy, compromise becomes unlikely. Phyllis clings to control because surrender feels like erasure. Cane pushes forward because hesitation feels like risk. Neither is operating calmly. Both are calculating under emotional strain. As the weekend approaches, there are signs that Phyllis is attempting something she rarely prioritizes: reconciliation over dominance. Her effort to mend her relationship with Daniel and Summer may not be dramatic or theatrical, but it is significant. For perhaps the first time in this arc, she seems to understand that keeping the companies might cost her the only relationships that matter long-term. The question is whether this realization comes from genuine growth or from strategic repositioning. With Phyllis, that distinction is often blurred. If she chooses to return the companies voluntarily, it would mark one of the rare instances in her history where she relinquishes power for principle. That act would shock Genoa City. It would also redefine her, but there is another possibility: she loses them. And losing is different from surrendering. Losing strips pride. Surrendering, when chosen intentionally, can restore it. The narrative balance hinges on which path unfolds. Cane, regardless of outcome, will continue maneuvering. If the companies return to their original structure, he will ensure stability for Lily and the twins. If Phyllis resists and a forced transfer occurs, he will adapt accordingly. His approach is less about glory and more about outcome. That pragmatic edge gives him an advantage in this moment. He is not seeking applause. He is seeking security. What complicates matters further is how public perception intersects with private decisions. If Phyllis gives up control, she may regain her children's respect but lose influence. If she fights and loses, she may lose both. The stakes are layered. Corporate ownership is the visible battlefield, but motherhood is the hidden war. And I genuinely think that is where the real story lies. Phyllis can survive another business setback. She has done it before. But permanent estrangement from Daniel and Summer would fracture her in a way no boardroom defeat ever could. The showdown between Phyllis and Cane is not just about who outmaneuvers whom. It is about what each of them is willing to sacrifice. Cane will sacrifice reputation for Lily's safety. Phyllis may have to sacrifice power for her children's love. That is a far more intimate cost. At this point, it truly does seem as though Phyllis stands at a crossroads. Either she relinquishes the companies and regains something personal, or she clings to them and risks losing everything that cannot be rebuilt with strategy. And in Genoa City, where pride has destroyed empires and humility has occasionally restored them, the most surprising outcome might be the most human one.